All right, thanks for joining me on this session today. I'm having an interesting experience with various different forms of online storage. So you're probably familiar with this if you're in business, but there's providers like Dropbox and there's Google Drive and there's Box and there's a bunch of these services, OneDrive. And I have a client and he's using Dropbox and I'm like, oh, sweet. Okay, that's totally fine. I usually deploy in Drive and I have deployed in Box as well. And they all have their idiosyncrasies. They have some interesting features. For instance, Box will put 1 and then 10 and then 11 and then 2, 3, 4, 5 versus Google Drive will put 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. And so to get around this, I had to put a 0 in front of 0, 1, 0, 2, 0, 3, and then the ordering became the same. One of the challenges about Dropbox was that it actually said, hey, you can use Word or you can use Google Docs. Box was totally cool. It was like, hey, you only get Word. And Drive obviously doesn't have Microsoft built in. It's only got Google Docs. But Dropbox, in their interesting choice, have said, hey, we're cool if you use Microsoft Word. We're cool if you use Google Docs. Which would you like to use? And as I started to play with this, I found out that one of the issues is that you can't use both of them. If you open a file in Microsoft Word, that's fine. But then if you close it down and open in Google Docs and then try and go back to Word, Word's like, oh no, it's already open. We can't do it because it'll get conflicted files. And it's like, all right, sweet. So I reached out to my client. I'm like, hey, what do you want to do? Do you want to use Google Docs or do you want to use Microsoft Word? Now, they didn't come back to me. They haven't come back to me yet with their decision. I'm like, okay, great. Is there anything that I can do? Can I begin the process of deployment? Now, the installation system for System.io is, as you'd expect, a series of processes. It's like do this, do this, do this, do this. And early in the process, it starts talking about installing folders and linking documents, but none of that's possible because there's no decision on whether to use Word or Google Docs. Not quite. Let me rephrase that. It is possible, obviously, to install all the folders and go, okay, great. Here's the folder setup. Here's the folder structure. So put that in, but the linking is very dependent on which one is chosen because the link that goes to Microsoft Word in Dropbox is different from the link that goes to Google Docs. So I need to know that. But I was like, okay, well, what am I going to do? Is there anything that I can do? And I was like, all right, well, maybe there's some separation, some ability to deploy some of these processes, but not all of them because I'm waiting on that decision. So I was like, okay, great. So I go ahead and do what I can. And it actually allowed me to do a bunch that I was like, okay, great. That's on point. That's on point. That's taken care of. Here are the gaps that remain that aren't possible until I get that decision. Now, what I want to share with you is that this is not possible with someone who's doing it for the first time. They will not have the capacity to see the interrelatedness or not between different processes. So some processes can be done without this decision, but some can't. And they might just go through and as soon as that first block comes that says link this document to this thing, they're like, well, we can't do it because I don't know whether we're using Google Docs or Word. And the benefit of expertise or mastery is that they're like, all right, great. I can see that we can survive without that decision and I can proceed with steps 3 and steps 5 and go ahead and get those done. And then when that decision is made, I'm already further ahead than if I chose not to. Now, look, I could have stopped and gone, you know what? I'm not going to deploy this right now at all. I'm not going to install the system at all. I'm going to wait for that decision and that contingency to be done. But for whatever reason, I was like, look, I want to be ahead of the game. There was a call that we had and the time frame for that was therefore compressed. It's like, look, this will make a difference for me if this is done. So I went ahead. The lesson out of all of this is that mastery allows creativity. I could proceed with the steps that could still be done because I knew the whole system. I know the whole installation. I'm like, okay, yep, we can do this, we can do this, we can't do this. That doesn't happen if it's my first time through. It actually takes experience to go through and improve and learn, and then the creativity can come. This is a significant benefit for when you're an entrepreneur and you want your team to be able to both handle a first implementation of a system, and that they can go through in detail and, go to this thing and then do that and then click this and click that. But as they get better and they get reps on the system, they're not going to need to look at all that fine detail. We're extraordinarily good at learning how to do things, particularly over repetitions. And it's like, okay, great. I might just need to look at the major headings and go this. Okay, great. And if I get really good, or I'm doing a system a lot, I'm just like, okay, I just need to know that that's done and that's done and that's done and that's done, and all the fine detail is taken care of. And so a good system has to be able to handle not only a first time through, but also an experienced person who's like, great, I don't need the fine detail. I know how to do this, but they still need to be able to show you as the entrepreneur where they're up to. What is the step that they're working through, even if they're not even going to that fine detail? So this is an important thing to consider when you're thinking about, hey, it's time to systematize. What do you want? Well, you want levels of mastery. You want someone first time through can achieve it, but you also want somebody who's done it 14 times or 28 times to be able to not have to go to that fine level of detail. So different levels of readership, different levels of competency need to be able to be built in to your systems and how you do those. All right, if you want some help on this, if you're like, you know what, Tom, you seem like you have dialed this in. I am at that stage. I'm doing $1 million+ in revenue, or I've got 5, 6, 7 team members. We're succeeding and we're starting to run into the problems of not having systems on point. Then I invite you to head over to systemio.dev and pop in your email, put in your name there, go watch the training that I put together. Thanks so much for tuning in. Look forward to seeing you on tomorrow's episode as we continue this exploration around systems and processes and the power that they have to scale your business. See you then.